Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to yet another great interview for our Business Connection Virtual Summit. Today, we're talking to Andrew Kitchner, and he's from New Wave Solutions. And we're going to be talking about the importance of doing surveys with your employees, understanding where they're at, what they want to do. So, without further ado, Andrew, please tell us who you are, what you do, and a little brief intro into what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So, Andrew, like Bill said, and I run New Wave Solutions. So, we're a surveying firm. Like you guys probably know, there's a lot of surveying firms out there. So, just two quick things that we do. One is we measure commitment instead of engagement. That's going to be a topic today. Two is we take the time to actually read employees' feedback by hand. We don't just automate it with software. So those are kind of two key differences, just motivated mainly by wanting to make surveys feel like an opportunity rather than an obligation.
Absolutely. So, getting right into it, let's start off from the beginning. Why is it important to survey your employees and ask questions and find out information?
Yeah. So obviously there's more than one type of employee survey. So the reason why you might do an exit survey versus stay survey versus an onboarding survey, there's a lot of different reasons. But they kind of fall into two categories. One is feedback. You want to know how employees are feeling, what they're dealing with, the changes that they want, the suggestions that they want. You want to give them a voice. That's the first reason. The second reason is because you are generally measuring a people metric. And that can be job satisfaction, an employee net promoter score, employee engagement, or like we're going to talk about, organizational commitment. And the thinking or kind of strategy behind those metrics and that type of survey is that companies want to choose a metric and use it as a barometer because it's predictive of desired outcomes. So the reason why people have been measuring engagement instead of job satisfaction is because it's a more reliable predictor of desired outcomes. And so it serves as, like I said, a barometer for kind of these various people-based outcomes that HR leaders, people leaders, and just organizational leaders are trying to achieve.
Okay. And this definitely plays well into a lot of the other things that we've been talking about, from onboarding to culture to all the different reasons that you would get feedback. So let's dive into the feedback a little bit more before we kind of get into some of the
Yeah.
executionable stuff. So with feedback, we mentioned a few different areas that you do it when you have someone exit or onboard. What are some of the things we're asking? What are some of the things that we're trying to get back, so that we can apply it to getting better?
Yeah, yeah. So the simplest kind of structure to do this in is to simply find out what do employees want more of, what do they want less of, and that's really it. So there's more that you can get with that, but if you look at an exit survey, for instance, you want to find out, okay, what did they want less of, and if there was less of it, they might have stayed. What they want more of, and if there was more of it, they maybe would have stayed. If you want an onboarding survey, you want to know what did they want more of in the first 90 days? What did they want less of in the first 90 days? That's the general idea, is you want to know what are you doing well and what are you not doing well, or where is there room for improvement?
Okay. And once we get this data back, how are we starting to interpret this to get to those changes that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's for the last 25 years, it's been a very subjective process. So there's been three people in a room that sit through the survey results and they go, that one really speaks to me. That one's important. That was the starting point. Since then, there have been companies that do it just based on percentages. So if a employee workforce commonly suggests that they want, let's say, maybe more outings outside, hypothetically. If that was a prevalent response, then that's what would be focused on. That's been the standard approach. The problem is is just because something's a common suggestion doesn't mean that it's the most desired change nor the most impactful change. And so the way that we do it, and more companies have been doing it this way, is we're using regressions. Now, I won't go into the stats and bore all of your listeners here, but essentially, regressions they establish causal relationships between two variables. So it's not just correlational that these two things tend to go up in tandem. It's that one directly causes another. And what we do, because we're focused on the organizational commitment instead of engagement or these other metrics, because it's more predictive, is we use regressions and we can determine, is company culture impacting commitment more? Is pay and benefits going to impact commitment more? What are the top drivers? Mm-hmm. And once we have the top drivers, we can essentially rank and prioritize what to focus on, and then we can use the feedback.
And that's really good, because that really applies more to what all business owners need to think of, which is, where's that return on investment going? So, knowing the exact reason that people are having these issues is really what's going to change it, as opposed to just, like you said, going with the majority kind of deal. All right. So switching over to the people metric, you mentioned some of the things that we're measuring. How do we start applying that?
Yeah. So it started with job satisfaction surveys. Those started in the 60s, more or less. And they really never caught fire, but they became a tool essentially in the back pocket of some people-focused business owners. From there, what happened is Gallup came out with this metric called engagement. Now, most people think engagement must have started in academics or it came into research, and then it found its way into business like everything else does. It kind of does that trickle down. That's not really what happened. Gallup, which is a good company, I like Gallup. They do a lot of great research. They've been pioneers in this engagement industry, but it's become a $1.4 billion industry focused around this metric. So there's not a lot of motivation to go out there and ask, okay, so we were measuring job satisfaction, then engagement, but it's been engagement for 30 years. Mm-hmm. You think there hasn't been any innovation in the last 30 years? And I'll be honest, when I first got into this, I was hooked on the buzzword of engagement too. I did grad research expecting engagement to be the best predictor of all these desired outcomes. And it wasn't. It was the 35th best as far as long-term retention. And so when we think about essentially what these metrics, the purpose that they serve, are they measuring what we're claiming that they're going to measure? So just because you say it's an engagement measure doesn't mean you're measuring engagement. The second thing is that measure is going to be reliable across groups, whether you measure in Christmas, whether you measure mid-year. You don't want these external variables that have nothing to do with your business impacting this singular metric that you're putting so much effort into. So you want it to be a reliable metric. It doesn't change state to state as far as its reliability, country to country. You need a reliable metric. Once you have those, then you're pretty much set. You have your metric. And then it comes down to the degree to which it can predict the outcomes you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So now that we've gotten an idea of what we're measuring, the two different ways that it starts to be put together, and how we're going to start applying it, how are we actually gathering this data? How are we setting this up?
Yeah. So the way that we measure commitment, and it's organizational commitment, and I'll just give a brief definition. It's really simple. It's just an employee's commitment to their company's goals, values, and mission. So pretty straightforward. As far as how we measure it, there's an established measure that's been around and well validated with over 10,000 research papers behind it. And it's a Likert scale. Those are the strongly agree to strongly disagree questions. Mm-hmm. Take less than 5 minutes. And what it does is it measures essentially 3 types of commitment that exist. What makes people want to stay at their company, feel like they should stay, and feel like they need to stay, or it's the right decision to stay.
Hmm. Okay. So, all right. So let's kind of get into how, like, that's the test we're taking. And then now I want to kind of get into, so I have a company, I have X amount of employees. I understand we're using the test with a strongly likely, dislikely, and we're gonna, let's say measure feedback or whatever, or say we're doing the metric. How are we bringing that into our company from a rollout standpoint?
Yeah. So what we're going to do for survey, we're going to benchmark. So that's going to be a starting point for you to measure yourself and our progress against. In addition to that benchmark, you're going to be able to compare your average across the industry's average,
Hmm.
both from our research, over 500,000 employees surveyed, as well as academic and private industry research that we've gathered. We have the largest database of commitment scores. So you're going to know, are my employees more committed to our company's goals, values, and mission than is true for our competitors? And no matter whether you're pro survey, anti survey, you think they're stupid, you think they're the best, if you find out that your employees are much more or much less committed than the average in your industry, that's either a problem or a great feeling.
Hmm. Absolutely. All right. So now that we've taken it, we kind of learned a little bit about applying it, um, and some of the benefits. I think the last thing I want to get into before we do any of those actionable steps that people can take is, um, let's set it into an example. It's a manufacturing company. They have 100 employees. They're trying to measure, maybe a feedback on um, like a new software that they rolled out. They really want to know, like, can people operate it? How are they working? Let's take them from beginning to end, so that we can have now an example for people to see it applied to.
Yeah, absolutely. And so maybe we can get into this more after, like during those actionable steps. But generally, what I would offer is that we'll do a survey strategy audit. So, whatever their strategy is, we'll go in and we'll just audit it. We'll do that generally for free for qualified and interested companies. And we'll just give them feedback, whether they walk away with it and go hire another company or come to us. We'll do that audit for them. So that's open to your listeners as well. As far as how we would do it in that manufacturing company, manufacturing, and they're looking just for feedback on software. My mind always goes to what can go wrong. If
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of do a standard approach of, oh, what do you think about this software? Where can that go wrong? Well, first of all, you could get low response rates.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to motivate somebody to actually respond to that?
Yeah.
Do you want to take a survey about software, one of the 20 softwares? Probably not. But if you're not thinking about that, then you're going to get feedback from what percentage? 30,
Mm-hmm.
40? Those are going to be the strongest feeling employees, maybe. Maybe they'll be the most bored. Are they going to be representative? Maybe not. So you want to, first of all, overcome that issue. You want to create a survey, like I said, that feels like an opportunity for employees to have their voice heard and an opportunity for HR listeners to consolidate feedback and make actionable improvements. So that's the first thing that I would say as far as thinking about would I want to take the survey, and if not, let's kind of reconsider that strategy that we're going with. The second is it seems like such a simple survey. Software, you want feedback, you can do it internally, you don't have to hire a company. But let's say the head of IT chose that software, or the head of a plant chose that software, and you work underneath that individual. Are you going to be likely to criticize that decision when that feedback is going to another manager that has lunch with that person who
Mm-hmm.
chose the software? No, you're not.
Yeah.
And whether or not that's happening in a company, if you don't know, then you can't trust the feedback. And if you're going to spend money and take action based on this feedback and you can't trust it, you don't know whether people are being honest, then there's an issue. And so, even with simple surveys like that, I never recommend that written feedback be given directly internally. I always
Hmm.
recommend using a third party. Doesn't even have to be me, can be anybody else. But you're going to want honest and candid feedback. And if you don't
Hmm.
go out of your way to empathize with the fact that people are going to be hesitant, either because they don't want to take the survey, they don't trust it, if you can't empathize with that, you're already behind the eight ball.
Hmm. Absolutely. Okay, cool. So to wrap up, what are some actionable steps for people looking to implement this in their company and get these the results that we're looking for, and next steps to kind of get into it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, people can reach out to me and I'll do an audit with them. That's one thing that generally I'll do. It's no cost or anything like that. I'm not going to pitch you. And you'll walk away with recommendations that are going to be implementable that day. That's the first one. The second one is to ask employees, have conversations with them about the survey. Do they actually look forward to it? Do they feel like their voice is being heard? Now, these are just conversations to gauge. This isn't you gathering feedback about feedback. Uh, this is just you having a human conversation of, hey, that survey, did you take it? Did you actually like look forward to it? Are you confident something's going to be done with it?
Hmm.
Gathering those kind of post-survey sentiment from employees is really important.
Yeah.
Um, and what you'll find is that if employees don't feel like action's going to be taken, even if their responses are going to be kept secure, then it's not worth their time.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing is that you can do without me is just ask employees how do they feel about it, and go out of your way to create the psychological safety necessary to where if they say I freaking hate our surveys, that they feel comfortable saying that.
Hmm.
And so that's another thing that I would do. I would look at participation. If you're getting under 80% participation on company-wide surveys that are done once or twice a year, for most industries, if you're getting 70, 60, 50% regularly, then there's an issue. There's one of those issues of trust, not confidence that action will be taken. It was too long. I see companies do 100-question surveys. Who that? I'm in the industry and I don't want to take that. I don't even want to look at it. So no employee is eager to take 100-question survey. So why would you give it? Just kind of having some of these common sense discussions, even internally, are beneficial. The last one maybe is looking at kind of that concept we were talking about before. Don't start with a survey. Start with what's the desired outcome that you want. Are you trying to give employees a voice? Are you trying to create that software feedback? Are you trying to improve employees' commitment because you want retention to improve? You need to start with what is the desired outcome of this initiative before you start planning anything, and then kind of start from a first principles approach of, okay, now that we know where we're trying to go, how do we get there?
Mm.
Uh, Very often that's overlooked because there's survey templates all over the internet. And so they're really easy to grab. But do you know why you're spending the money on the survey and spending time analyzing the results? Because if you don't, it's going to be hard to actually make improvements that help the company and help employees.
Absolutely. Great. So that's really a good amount of steps for them to take, and I love how you're preparing them to even get ready to do a survey. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching the interview and going through it. And we will see everybody in the networking event tonight at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time through Zoom. Talk to you all soon.